Hi there, it's Tank Earl, and this is the LG G Flex. Yes, it's the round and flexible phone. So this is my video review. I want to thank Negri Electronics, Ryan Negri, who was kind enough to send me this review unit because this is a device meant for the Korean market, so you can only buy it through importers right now. It's pretty steep. It's almost $1,000, $900 and a bit. So keep that in mind while I talk about this phone. So if you look at it at first, it doesn't look that huge until you put it next to the G2, LG's flagship, and then you realize this is a very large phone. Yes, it is a 6-inch display. It's really quite big. Now, it's not quite as big as the champion of big, which we all know is the HTC One Max. And there it is. It's almost as big. So I'll get back to those two devices in a second, but in the meantime, what's the shtick here? Why would you spend almost $1,000 on a phone like that? Well, it's big, but it's also curved. And let me illustrate this really quickly. It is absolutely and completely curved. What's most exciting is that it's even further than that, flexible. So I can push on it like this, and it actually flexes and bends when I put my finger on it. It's really quite uncanny. So there's a bunch of other things that are interesting about it I'll get into. Is that the back is made out of a certain type of new plastic that is supposedly self-healing. So anyway, let's get back to the beginning. What is this phone? Basically, it's a G2 with a few changes made. It's a very big G2. So the first thing is this is one of the first phones to use what's called OLED, plastic OLED. So instead of being an OLED display that's built on a sheet of glass, it's an OLED display built on a sheet of plastic, which gives it the flexibility. Now, it's only a 720p display, 720 by 1280 instead of 1080 by 1920 like the G2 would be. So you lose in pixel density. But it is curved and flexible, and that's kind of interesting. And it's also a 6-inch display, which is nice. So you lose a little bit in terms of pixel density. And the other thing you lose a little bit of, and I'm going to bring up Chrome perhaps so you can have a better look at what I'm talking about. This background screen here, if you get really close, and I'm not quite sure the camera will do it justice, but it's actually a slight gray color. And if you look very close with like a microscope, or not even a microscope, but a magnifying glass, you'll find that it's a very noisy, like an assortment of RGB colors. So, you know, it's not as high quality of a display as what we used to with AMOLED typically, or what we see, for example, on the G2's incredibly beautiful IPS panel. Again, here's the G2, and you can see immediately the improvement in color and brightness. These are all set to auto brightness right now. So, you know, yes, it's a large display. Yes, it's curved. Yes, it's pushing the envelope in terms of using a plastic substrate, but it's not as good. I mean, reality is you probably won't really notice too much unless you're picky about pixel density. I would grade this display as good, but not very good or not amazing. So the rest of it, I said, pretty much a G2. You got a Snapdragon 800 on board, 2 gigs of RAM. This is LTE Advanced for Korea. Unfortunately, it does not work on LTE Advanced in the US. But so if you see here, it's on AT&T, and we're getting HSP Plus, which is what you'd expect. Same layout as the G2 in front. As you can see, you got a speaker grill here. You have a sensor for proximity and the front-facing camera. I believe it's a 2-megapixel front-facing camera. On the bottom, you have the LG logo. These buttons are not capacitive. They're actually, well, they're part of the screen. So what else is there to say? In the back, again, LG logo, speaker grill for mono speaker, the LTE Advanced logo. And again, here is the same thing as the G2. There are no buttons on the edge of this phone. All the buttons are on the back, with the power lock key here, which is surrounded by a little LED notification, which is also replicated with an LED notification in front. And you got the volume up and volume down, 13 megapixel autofocus camera, LED flash, and of course, importantly, the infrared transmitter here, which is on top on the G2. There you go. And as you can see, it's the same button layout, same camera layout. The only difference is the speakers, which are at the bottom on the G2. Other than that, this is it. This is the package. If you look on the edges, there's really not much to be said. Nothing at all. As I said, no buttons. So this is the right side. On the bottom here, you have the micro USB, which is also an MHL port. And then I believe it could actually be a slim port. Not sure. Primary microphone, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. On top here, get nothing at all. Just a secondary microphone for noise reduction, stereo audio recording. And on the left-hand side, you have the SIM tray right up here. So SIM tray, nothing else. And again, you can really see the curviness of this. So how does it feel? Well, it feels really good in hand. It fits nicely in pockets, even though it's pretty large. You have to have deep pockets. But the best part is when you hold it to your face, because of this curve, right? It gives you, it's kind of banana shaped, so it goes towards your mouth a little bit more. And I think for a large phone, it certainly makes a little bit easier to have a conversation, I think, because of the curviness. Other than that, really, it's just a gimmick. Other things that are important to notice and to point out, that this 13 megapixel autofocus camera does not have optical image stabilization, something you'll find on the G2. So that's a pretty big difference. Consider that. That means that you have to hold pretty still in low light. But this is pretty much the same camera module you saw on LG's Optimus G Pro, which, as we know, is perfectly adequate camera. So really no complaints. This is the same user interface you find on the G2, so this is not a carrier branded device. You get the usual set of applications pre-installed, a lot of them for Korea here. Obviously this is meant for Korean carriers, so I'm not going to walk you through all this, but it's super fast and snappy. Snapdragon 800 driving a 720p display. Another thing that's different from the G2 is battery life. This has incredible battery life, 3,500 milliamp hour battery with a Snapdragon 800, and right now I've got LTE disabled since it doesn't support US bands, so it's saving even more power. In comparison, as you probably know, the G2 runs a 3,000 milliamp hour battery, which we already know it's one of the best phones in terms of battery life out there as a 5.2 inch device. So this will carry you on for probably 2 or 3 days. I've easily gone 3 days with this phone. So, in a nutshell, what you're getting is a G2 Redux in some areas. You're getting a larger screen by lower screen resolution. You're getting a larger battery, but you're losing the optical image stabilization. And of course, no LTE with this device in the US. If you buy this device in Asia or use it in Asia or Europe, of course, you might be able to get some LTE. Some of the bands are compatible. So there you have it in a nutshell. This is the LG G Flex, the first flexible phone. And yes, it does bend very, very nicely. Let me show you. As you can see right there, you can just bend it. But keep in mind that this self-healing plastic in the back, of course, this is Negri's device. I don't want to do any damage to it, but others have tested this, including Engadget, and it doesn't always self-heal as well. So it's very nice for fine scratches, but don't expect it to fix itself if you really abuse it, like drop it onto concrete or something like that. But it's interesting to see that manufacturers are looking at making these phones flexible and more resilient. And that together with Sony, who's making waterproof phones, I think it's interesting to see where we're headed. So size comparison. So here is the G2 from LG, again, the flagship and much smaller device. As you can see, it dwarfs the G2. And so let me put them, flip them over so you can see what they look like side by side from the back. And then let's line them up so that we can see this curvature, and you can see through where the curvature happens. So that's one comparison. The other obvious comparison is the Mega phone. Well, it's not the Mega since Samsung has Galaxy Mega, but this is the largest phone that I have, which is the HTC One Max. And as you can see, this is about the same size, but those are gigantic phones. So let me just flip them over really quickly. You can see what this looks like. No fingerprint reader on the LG. This is the not so useful fingerprint reader on the HTC. And then of course if I put them, if I line them up like this, you can see that the 1 Max is actually slightly longer here, down here. And again, here you can see the curvature of the G Flex quite nicely. So there you have it, comparisons with some other well-known devices. So again, the LG G Flex, a G2 with a larger screen, larger battery, and a slightly lesser camera. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll be back soon with more video reviews of phones. Cheers.